Okay, so here we're on page 5, compound interest in annuities, and basically page 5 is very similar to page 4. The only difference is the point of view. Annuities are a lot like loans. It's just that annuities have like a certain amount that you start out in the account, and then it gets paid out every month until it gets to zero, right? In the case of a loan, you get a certain amount at the beginning of the loan, and then you pay it back every month until finally the balance is zero. So in both cases, you start out with an amount that's not zero. You convert that amount into a monthly transaction until you get to the point where that original amount has gone to zero. Okay, so you do it the exact same way. All right, so let's do number 1. Number 1 says Sammy takes out a loan of 150,000 euros to buy a boat. The loan is 20 years at 5% per annum. Just like on page 4, what you want to look at is this an annual transaction or is it a monthly transaction? And based on that, you're going to figure out what your N value is, what your I value is, and to see if you need to make adjustments by a factor of 12 or not. Okay, so let's look at that first. So Sammy takes out a loan of 150,000 euros, so that's the amount of the loan, which is the PV. And then to buy a boat, the loan is for 20 years at 5% per annum. And so what determines whether or not the N is going to be 20 or N is going to be 20 times 12? Well, it depends on if he pays every month. Oh, look at that. How much he needs to pay each month. So we already know that the N value is going to be a 20 times 12. Okay. And the 5% interest rate is going to be a 5 divided by 12 because the transactions are every month. Okay. So let's do that. We're going to change the N value to 20 times 12. That turns out to be 240, I think. I'm sorry, 20 times 12, not 2. 20 times 12, which is 240. The I value is going to be 5 divided by 12. And the present value is going to be 150,000 euros. Okay, so what would be the monthly payment to pay off this 150,000 euro loan monthly? So we do that by pressing Alt-Solve on top of the payment field with the future value being 0 because future value is always 0 in the case of paying off a loan and also when you use up an annuity. So the amount of monthly payment should be $989.93, and this is euros. Okay? Another loan was for 10 years at 5% per annum. Determine how much Sammy would pay each month in this case. Okay, so the difference between this and the other case is it's 10 years instead of 20, so it would be 10 times 12 instead of 20 times 12, so it would be 120 instead of 240. The interest rate in this case is 5% also, so the 0.416 does not change. And now let's see what the payment's going to be. It's going to be 1,590.98. Okay? So that's quite a bit more, isn't it? For each of these calculations, find out the difference in monthly payments and the amount of interest paid. Okay, well, so the difference in monthly payments is 1,590.98 minus 989.93, which is 601.05. So the difference in the monthly payments is 601.05. Obviously, the 10-year loan is going to be a lot more expensive than the 20-year loan because you're paying it off in less time. And the amount of interest paid. So the amount of interest paid you can calculate by finding the total amount paid and then subtracting the subtracting the value of the loan, because you paid off the 150,000, but the amount that you paid more than that is the interest, right? So in order to find that, what you need to do is you need to multiply the payments by the number of times you made the payment, because on the finance app it doesn't actually give you that information. So like, for example, the $989.93, that was paid 20 years, 12 months per year, so that's 240 times. So we could find the total amount by multiplying by 240. The $1590.98 was 120 times because it was 10 years, right? So let's find out what each of those were, and then we can figure out how much the interest was. $989.93 times 240, that is $237,583.20. And if I subtract the amount of the loan, which was $150,000, the amount of interest paid was $87,583.20. Okay, and then for the other case where it was $1590.98 times 120, then the amount paid was $190,917.60. And then if I subtract out the amount of the actual loan, which is $150,000, I end up with $40,917.60. $40,917.60. Okay, so in the first case, the amount of interest paid was like $87,000. And the second case, the amount of interest paid was like $40,000. So there's a lot less interest paid also if you pay it back quicker, which makes sense, right? All right. Number 2, Mr. and Mrs. Jones take out a mortgage of 350 UK pounds for a house. The mortgage is for 30 years at 2.3% per annum. Find their monthly repayments and discuss whether this is a reasonable amount. Okay, so this is a monthly problem. So that means that all of our n values, the I values, need to be adjusted by a factor of 12. So 30 years needs to be multiplied times 12. And the 2.3% interest rate per annum needs to be divided by 12. And then, of course, the n value, which is for, the n value is going to be multiplied by 12, right? Let me just rewrite that. 12. Gosh, that's terrible. Okay, so 30 times 12. Okay. So I'm going to go up to n, and I'm going to put 30 times 12, which I could write 30 times 12, or I could just write 360. 360. The I value is going to be 2.3% divided by 12, so I'm just going to do 2.3 divided by 12. The present value is going to be 350,000 euros. And the payment, remember the FV is always going to be 0, the P over Y and the C over Y is always going to be 1. So the payment in this case is going to be 1,346.80. And remember, it's negative because if you start out with a loan, that's the amount of money that goes into your wallet. And then you pay it back every month, $1,346.80. Okay? So the amount of the repayment is 1,346.80. And then it asks, and that's euros, it says, discuss whether this is a reasonable amount. Well, it's like they didn't really, this is kind of like an IA thing to look at, right? It's like, on an exam, they're not going to ask this either because it's too open-ended. But in an IA, you might discuss about whether this amount is reasonable. One of the things you would look at, and this is a question that you should ask yourself as you are deciding as a person who has started working, if you should buy a house or if you should rent an apartment, you need to figure out what this amount is compared to what you would pay in rent, right? So if you're going to buy a house, you're going to have to pay $1,346 a month. What would you pay to rent a place in the same town, right? And I looked to see what the average rent was in the UK, and it's like, I don't know, 600 or 700 euros. I'm sorry, pounds. It's not euros. Okay. So it's like 700 pounds. So basically you're paying a lot more for your house, but in the end, is it worth it for you to have your own house? Maybe the house is bigger. Maybe if you rented it would be an apartment, etc. So those are the things you should consider if you're talking about it in an IA, but okay. All right. Zach takes out a loan at 2,000 euros at 4%. He repays the loan in 5 end-of-year installments. Find his yearly payment. Okay, so he takes out a loan for 2,000, so this would be the present value of the loan. 4%, I don't know if we need to adjust this by a factor of 12. It depends on whether it's a monthly or yearly problem. It's a yearly problem, so we do not need to multiply or adjust this 4% by any factor. We could just type it directly into I. And the 5 end-of-year installments, that would be 5 years, so we could just keep that as is. We don't need to multiply it by 12 because it's a yearly payment. So let's go ahead and put the data into the calculator. We're going to put n equals 5. The I value is going to be 4. The present value is going to be 2,000. The payment is going to be unknown. And of course, FV is going to be 0, and P over Y and C over Y are going to be 1. So Alt, solve. $449.20, not dollars, but 449 euros and 25 cents is the yearly payment. Okay, last loan problem. A car costs 28,000 US dollars. Benji takes out a loan at 10% per annum for 5 years. Calculate the amount that Benji must pay each month and comment on your answer. So a car costs 28,000. That looks like it would be the present value. It's the loan amount of the loan. Benji takes out a loan at 10%, so that would be our I value, except for the fact that he's going to pay each month. It's going to be a monthly payment. So the 10 needs to be divided by 12 to be put into I. And then 5 years, it would normally be n, except for the fact that this is a monthly problem, so we need to multiply the 5 by 12. Calculate the amount that Benji must pay each month. As usual, we're looking for PMT. Normally, we're looking for PMT in these problems, right? N is going to be 60. I is going to be 10 divided by 12. PV is going to be 28,000. And the payment is what we don't know. And of course, FV is going to be 0 as usual. P over Y and C over Y are going to be 1 as usual. 594.92. That is going to be the monthly payment. Comment on your answer. Again, this is like something that you might do in an IA. You would reflect on the mathematical answer and connect it back to the non-math context and say what it means in that particular context. In this case, you might say, oh, well, $594.92. Let's take a look at the amount of income that Benji has every month. It's $1,000. He needs to pay at least, $400 for his half of the rent for the apartment that he's living in with a roommate. If you add this car payment up with the $400 he has to pay for the rent, then he's left with almost nothing to buy food with. So this is totally impractical. He needs to go back to the bank and get a loan which is stretched out further, or pay a bigger down payment, or find a cheaper apartment, move back in with his parents, etc., etc. So like on an IA, you would be like going back and interpreting that value. Okay, that's it.